All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for episode 201 of the Red Rain podcast. So please welcome in your host, the one, the only Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter, sporting his Houston, Texas Rangers hat, looking like he's fresh off the set of playing Cooper Norris on Landman. We are, Landman, man. How about those Texans? We'll get to them and everything else. It's episode 2001, A Space Odyssey of sorts. We're going to cover a lot of ground here today. We're going to start off with the roster and break it down. Who's coming back? Who maybe the Cardinals will have to let go of and trim the roster down to create cap space. We wanted to get ahead of that first, and then we've got all kinds of stuff to talk about with the coaching candidates and some scoops that you might be interested in hearing. So let's go on. And welcome back, Sam, our resident Arizona icon from Scottsdale, fresh off. What'd you shoot yesterday? What'd you have on the?
We don't want to discuss this.
All right. Well, maybe at least Brooks Koepka is coming back to the tour.
There you go. Concentrate on Kafka's.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go down this roster. It's really interesting to look at. And there's a lot of positives, but also a lot of question marks. So let's start with the quarterback position. And, of course, Kyler Murray. Here's what it looks like. The cap hit this year would be 52.6. Of course, if he's on the roster, then 2027 is much in play for him there, too. So he has 36.8 guaranteed. And then he's got a 54.7 million dead cap. So what's curious to me is this a little different than 3 years ago? Is Kyler Murray part of a quid pro quo? Are they even listening to coaches, asking the question, what do you think about Kyler and keeping Kyler? If they are, I think that's totally bogus this time around because then it shows how wishy-washy they are. It also shows how, they've embarrassed Kyler twice with the homer clause and then with the silent benching and all of the stuff that went on this year. I wouldn't blame him. He's checked out. He wants to go somewhere else. And I don't care if, who comes in here. The third time around financially is too much of a risk. And so if Bidwell and Ossenford are still asking the question, it just would show just how much they don't get it. And they don't get the psychology of what's going on here. Because once you kind of alienate a player and they get 2 feet out, it's really impossible to get them back in with 2 feet. It really is. And as much as we're fascinated with Kyler's talent, here it hasn't worked. We've gone through 2 coaching staffs. Whoever comes in the third coaching staff should not be saddled with this, or it could be more of the same. And, so I'm tied to this. A fresh start for all sounds good to me. What do you guys think? Sam, start with you.
I couldn't disagree with the word you said, and Kyler needs to go.
Little Rock?
Yeah, ultimately it's up to the GM to make that call, and it seems like they made that call when they put him on IR back in November. That was the breaking of essentially trust and deciding we'd rather him go on IR than have him try and come back so that we can protect our 36.8 guaranteed money if he ends up not, right, or if he ends up getting hurt again. So, right, yeah, I think they're headed for a breakup. It's seeming more and more likely like they're just going to end up having to waive him and taking the dead cap hit. Maybe they'll spread it out over 2 years, but yeah, maybe I don't know the team, but maybe there's a team that would offer a fourth or a fifth or a sixth and be willing to take on some of the money. But as of right now, I don't see the team.
If they don't cut or trade Kyler by March 15th, they're going to owe him another $20 million. So they can't spread the cap hit. And I think we're going to find out real soon what's going to happen with Kyler. I don't think we'll be in suspense for long.
And if you give him the $20 million and he struggles again this year in a new system, there is no way you're going to be able to trade him. None. And I'll tell you what, today's a key day, because today we'll probably find out whether Dante Moore is declaring for the draft, and maybe Trinidad Chambliss might make a decision there. You know, I mean, I know that Mississippi has signed some really good young quarterbacks in case Chambliss can't win his waiver. And maybe by now he's figured out that this draft would be an ideal draft to jump into, because it is very thin at the top. And imagine if both of them go back to school, maybe the market for Kyler could heat up as in a trade. So who knows?
I do see that, but the other weird part is the Tua situation in Miami now, where now you have two of these quarterbacks that are potentially cost expensive that you could trade for. So it's a tough game to balance, but you're right. You could see, kind of like Daniel Jones last year, you could see maybe Minnesota make a trade. You could see maybe, I don't know, like an Atlanta make a trade, depending on what the new GM wants to do with Michael Penix. But there's not a ton of options. Miami obviously still needs a quarterback, but we'll see.
Yep. And you know, the reclamation projects is a theme now in the NFL. Look at Darnold, look at Daniel Jones, you know, change of scenery, right coach. You know, I mean, I'd like to see Kevin O'Connell grab Kyler Murray. I'd love to see what he could do with him. You know, something like that. And because I'm not sure they're all that convinced that J.J. McCarthy's their guy, and they have him on a rookie deal, so you know it could make sense for them. And I don't think they're in the Daniel Jones sweepstakes anymore, because it looks like the Colts are really locked in on him. So, but continuing the quarterback room, you got Jacoby Brissett for $7.2 million of a cap, and he's an ideal bridge. Look at you know, Drake May, for example, you know, in his rookie year, having Jacoby as a mentor, that was a good thing. Now, if they wanted to revamp the whole room, the dead cap's only 1.75. So, you know, maybe they go young, maybe they do a trade, maybe, you know, they like a veteran out there, who knows? But whoever the new head coach is, will have should have a huge say on how they're going to rebuild the room. Keaton Slovis at $1 million is just fine. Haven't seen much of him yet in Cardinal Red, so you know, I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep him around on that salary. So yeah, quarterback's going to be a really focal point of not only the hire but the off season, and going to be exciting to watch what they do with it. Let's go to running back. Here's one of the biggest, toughest decisions the Cardinals will have to make with James Conner, unfortunately going down with his injury. You know, with a $9.8 million coming back from injury at his age. Got to love the leadership, though, and you can't count him out ever. But zero's guaranteed on this year's contract, and it's a $2.25 million dead cap. What do you think, guys? Sam?
Unfortunately,
hold on to him, or do you let him go?
Unfortunately, I think you got to let him go. Yeah. They're going to need that $7.5 million cap space.
Yeah, I think so too. Little Rock?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to have to let him go, although I don't know what his next team looks like. I know he's valued in the locker room, so maybe it's like a Kyle Juszczyk situation where maybe he comes back on a lesser dollar amount and
Right,
is able to keep rehabbing. But
right, right.
yeah, I think for bookkeeping reasons, they will probably cut James Conner and then figure things out from there.
See if they can re-sign him. I think that makes complete sense. Trey
Yeah.
Benson, we don't really know what we have yet. He was running well this year, 5 point something a carry till he got hurt, and then it was weird when he came back, couldn't come back. And so this was a tough year for him. I'm not sure we can count on him as an RB1. Of course, if free agency goes beautiful for the Cardinals and they address all their needs, it's a pretty dang good running back at the top of this draft. I mean, and with the way we've seen running backs carry teams, McCaffrey, Saquon, and then you got the Dijon,
Bijan.
yeah, and ATN. So that's for a future conversation. But it's fascinating to me that how the running back position in the NFL now is really growing on people. And Bijan look at how he took over the game against us. He absolutely took over that game. Jahmyr Gibbs is a game breaker. I mean, sometimes when you get a great running back, it means 2 or 3 more wins a season, at least. And for the 49ers, you take McCaffrey out of their lineup. I don't know if they're in my opinion, they definitely would have been in the playoffs. But Benson's obviously a keeper. Amari and Bam. Oh, sorry for the typo. Bam, not. But Bam, yes, not. Because Bam's a player. He is a player. I love both of these guys. I'm so excited to see these guys get a fresh start with a new coaching staff because the way they handled DeMarcado, I thought was a huge mistake. You got to understand psychology of players and everything, and they just pigeonholed him, and and that's the last thing he wanted. He really feels like he can be at least a top end RB2 in this league, and not get leapfrogged by someone from the practice squad when the starter goes out. So, but Bam was really fun to watch, and boy, is he explosive. So, and I thought Kiner ran hard enough to stick around as depth. Why not? That's not guaranteed money, so have him in camp and roll him out there. Anything to add?
Depends what they have to pay these guys, and depends on who else they can bring in at that kind of money.
Yeah,
but I like that running back group.
Yeah, the one that I'm stuck on is Connor, just because they want to have the money to do other things, but the idea of just moving on from James Conner to create a running back room of Trey Benson and Bam Knight and Amari DeMarcado with questions still on the offensive line,
right.
definitely it gives me pause for cause. And part of it too is like maybe you go back to the draft and you pick a running back, and whether it's Jeremiah Love or somebody else, and that solves the position. But
Right.
if you're going to sign a running back in free agency anyways, 9.8 million is not a total sunken cost. It's not a terrible deal. I'm just stuck on what they should do in that situation. But maybe there's other moves to be made before they make the decision on Connor.
Yeah, I mean, one guy who's gonna, look good on any team is Breece Hall, and they end up hiring, Mike LaFleur, who coached Breece Hall, and was had a huge bright spot with Breece Hall. maybe they make a huge push to get him in here, or any other, offensive coordinator, offensive minded head coach. Brees Hall is so multidimensional. He could be worth the investment. All right, let's go on to wide receiver. Now we know, Michael Wilson's obviously a keeper. I was just so excited to see him discover himself, and the Cardinals discover him. He's 1.7 total bargain on the last year of his deal. I mean, if they could cook up something now for Wilson on a 3-year deal, I'd do it if it's reasonable for both sides.
He's earned it.
Yeah. I mean, so, and then we'll save Marvin for last, but then Weaver, Palmer, Celia, Brooks, I thought showed some flashes. Bryson Green, they like as a young developmental player. There's some interesting depth here. Weaver probably has the best chance to maybe succeed Greg Dortch in the slot or as a slot and wide go route guy. So, but the main person to look at here is Marvin Harrison Jr. because it hasn't gone well. Whoever comes in has to try to unlock Marv. It's always going to be a focus for fans and pundits. And I'm thinking, I'm still incredulous. We're going to get to the coaching thing and why you don't even interview a Mike McDaniel, who is a tremendous coach for wide receivers. And you have Marvin Harrison unlocked or locked, so far. They're going to have to address this situation. Now, I'll just throw one thing out there. With the pressure on the Cardinals vis-a-vis the father and all this, and, is Marvin Harrison Jr. someone you might want to consider trading now rather than later? And my reason being is that if you look ahead to next year, something's going to give because I can't imagine Marvin Harrison Jr. playing on his rookie deal beyond 3 years. I mean, the way the whole thing's programmed with him and with his father, and you have to be willing. Let's say he has a good comeback year. Are you going to pay him 35, 40, a million? After it could be a Kyler Murray situation all over again with a holdout. I hate to say that, and I don't think necessarily Marv would do it, but I feel 100% certain that his dad would. Your thoughts?
Well, if they trade him pre-June 1, it's an $11 million dead cap hit, and they'd lose $1.6 million in cap space. I don't see him doing that. I also don't see him doing that because Monty will have to admit to the world that he drafted the wrong wide receiver and hired the wrong coaches to develop him. I don't think they're going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I imagine it is more cost beneficial for them to just keep Marvin and see if they can make it work with the 2X receiver position. Maybe they try Marvin in the slot. Maybe they just experiment with different things this year. I don't know, but I think for a former number 4 pick, like I was reading Bill Barnwell and he was talking about how a similar situation is going on in Jacksonville where they've discovered Myers in Washington, and now Brian Thomas is kind of the odd man out, and
right.
you don't really know what you do in that situation, but because they're former first round picks and have been productive in the league, you just stash them and figure out if you can. Because of the contract, it just makes more sense to keep them unless you get a first round pick offer in return, which I don't think anybody's offering for Brian Thomas, and I don't think anyone's offering for Marvin Harrison. So
really,
I don't think so.
Offer a first for Marvin Harris?
I don't know if someone would offer a first round pick for Marvin Harrison right now. Now the contract is the good thing that you're holding on to. Maybe the comparison is Amari Cooper when the Raiders traded him to the Cowboys, but if I remember correctly, I think Amari had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, but also I think they only got like pick 26 or something. And if you draft Marvin at 4 and 2 years later you're flipping him for pick 26, that feels like, to Sam's point, you're admitting mistake or you're admitting failure in that situation. So just because of the contract, I think it's beneficial to hold on to him.
It's probably a moot point, but what we've learned, and the reason why Marv's future in the NFL is cloudy is he's a little reluctant to catch balls over the middle. So that what can you get out of him from the slot? And in today's football, the top receivers, when you look down at the top of the list, they're all guys who play from the slot and can play out. I mean, Puka, Jackson Smith-Njigba. There's a reason why, like when Jacoby Myers goes to the Jags, suddenly Brian Thomas is, because Myers crushes it from the slot. So Cardinals have to figure that one out. And they currently here, do we see a legit slot wide receiver? Unless you make Willie the slot. I don't see one. And then we've got to talk about Dortch in a minute. So let's move on to the tight end. And we got a dandy, first team All-Pro and Trey McBride. Tip Ryman should be back on his rookie deal. Elijah Higgy Bear, I thought, really had some great moments for us. And he's very cost-friendly. Travis Vokolek had the neck injury. He's an equal rights free agent. I can't imagine them not re-signing him back. And they picked up Rivaldo Fairweather on a poaching practice squad deal for depth. Looks like a great room to me, and I don't think you need to add to it. Concur?
I agree.
Yeah. As long as Higgy Bear and Tip get back healthy, then I think you're good. But if they're not the same players they were before injury, maybe you consider bringing in someone else. But you won't know that in free agency, so I guess you just roll out with the same group.
Did Higgy get injured?
Did he not play at the end of the season?
I thought he finished out pretty strong.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm thinking.
We know that. But then, you also have a blocking specialist in Vokolek, who, with a neck injury, hopefully will be back too. So hopefully both of them are healthy. What I like about this is you have real balance there. You got two primary blockers and you got two primary receivers. And so let's move on.
All right. One other note, I was looking up the wide receiver contracts. I think Michael Wilson's probably in the Jerry Jeudy, 3 years, $52 million, or Christian Kirk 2 years, $37 million, or, guys like that, probably, if you're looking at a deal, something like that.
At that price, I want to see it another year.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just thinking of a more team friendly. It's good for him, good for. I'm not ready to take that leap with him.
They should extend him.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, but I think the reason why you can right now is that he'd be willing to accept. It could be a mutual arrangement where he takes he accepts a more modest salary to get guaranteed money.
Right.
Tackle, Paris Johnson Jr. My worry about him now is durability. Last 2 years on the IR, ending the season with a knee injury. That concerns me. The rest here don't do much in terms of giving you confidence at who's going to start at right tackle. Although I thought Josh Fryer had some good moments. I thought DeMontre Jacobs had some good moments. Christopher Jones had a tough year with the injury, and Valentin Sen is an interesting prospect I really, really like, but nobody knows he was out all year too. So I think it's pretty clear that we're going to need to address this in free agency and perhaps even with the draft. What do you guys think?
I definitely think they need to address this in the draft. They need to address this in one of the first rounds of the draft. You know, the problem with the offensive line is we don't have a clue where these guys are in their development. You could say the same thing about everybody on this team. Given the coaching staff they had to develop and groom players to ascend in the starters positions, we have no clue because the coaches had no clue.
Yeah.
With the exception of a handful of players, everybody on this roster, everyone we've gone through, everyone we will go through has regressed. So it's very difficult, given the offensive line coach that they brought in to replace a great offensive line coach. It's difficult to evaluate these guys.
It is. We basically have to do it by flashes.
That's right.
And then because flashes are alluring, but they're not necessarily convincing.
Right.
And we can address this with the guard position. I think Evan Brown you got to move off of. Do we all agree on that?
$5 million in savings. I think you have to.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And then I like Isaiah Adams and I like John Gaines II.
For sure.
I mean, I wouldn't count those guys out, but I think you got to add someone to that mix, obviously, to make it a 3-man race. In free agency or in the draft. But I think we've got, there was enough progress from Adams and Gaines to think these guys look like a fit. And you invested a 3rd and a 4th round draft pick in them, and you ought to get what you invested. Something out of that investment. So that's encouraging. And at the center spot, we got Jalte Frohl, who's been a tremendous anchor for our offense. And then this, young stud. I love Hayden Connor. I love his physicality. And so I listed him at center because they were using him as a swing center guard. But he also projects into our guard situation. So what you could do actually is draft a center, kick Connor back over to guard and be the 3rd guard there. And there's some, interesting center prospects like Pat Coogan, for example, of Indiana, who I had on a mock draft in the 5th round, I think, taking him in the 5th. So, and I like the kid from Miami too, the center there. So we get a good look at both of them on Monday night. Let's move on.
All right, let's go to the defense.
Here comes another huge decision. With Dalvin Tomlinson. Came on at the end. So it's cap. You can. Oh boy. So you can save $10 million on the cap by letting him go. Looks like.
Yeah.
And from what I saw from 17 games, I'd let him go. I was really disappointed. Love to see it at the end, though. It probably depends on who we hire and what kind of relationship Dalvin Tomlinson could have with the new head coach or the new defensive coordinator. We seem to be leaning towards defensive coordinator types, head coaching candidates. So that's a decision that's going to be left up to the coaches and to Monty. But again, so far a bust of a Monty defensive lineman, signing for significant money. And the irony is we got Calais on like a $6 million deal. And he was by far the best that Monty ever, And, he said he's going to know by March whether he wants to resume playing. Much could depend on who the Cardinals hire and whether, Calais gets the urge to come back for one more season here. He'll have options elsewhere too. So PJ Mustipher, I thought, was a really good find, and as a run stuffer, and he's an equal rights free agent, so it should be easy. Will be automatic to keep him around. Your thoughts on Tomlinson? What would you do?
Kyle, you want to take this one? I agree with Walt. He's been very disappointing. He was brought in to stuff the run. He plays next to Calais Campbell, and he underperformed.
Yeah, financially, you have to move on. That's kind of my thought. And man, it's crazy given how much they've invested in that defensive tackle position over the years that they just can't find any position, any guy that would work. But yeah, I mean, financially, you kind of have to, between that move and Evan Brown and potentially James Conner. I mean, you're creating potentially what is that? About $20 million in cap space, or $22 million in cap space for a team that, as Sam eloquently pointed out last week, is in a bad cap situation. I kind of think you have to move on and see if you can bring back Calais, draft, sign somebody else. You got to just go back to the well and see what you can find. It's kind of why I thought Tomlinson would be a good trade candidate at the deadline. Someone else takes him on. You don't have the same guaranteed money. Right. I thought he would have made a lot of sense for someone to trade for him, but the Cardinals didn't get that. Now it's kind of a cut.
You don't get that with that salary and the players sucking.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Deadline, he was a nobody. He's doing nothing for us. Nothing.
Well, yeah, and maybe the Cardinals paid down some of the contract just for a pick or something.
Oh yeah, they probably could do that.
Yeah, now it seems too late. Now you kind of either have to cut or release just because of the guarantees, or cut or keep, I guess I should say. Just I can't imagine bringing him back at that $16.2 million number.
Well, the buzz was when they signed him, it was an classic overpay, and looks like people were right. So, and
I'm trying to remember too. I can't remember. They didn't have Calais at that point yet. Calais came later, I think.
Correct. And so this is why the defensive end group, why it'd be so great to get Calais back for one more year, because Darius was coming on at the end there. I'm still not convinced he's a 3-4 DN. I think he's a 4-3 DN. And I don't know what they're going to do about it. Maybe now that he's been there a couple of years, he'll come on. But he was penetrating towards it, and maybe with a more attack style defense up front, they can use his quickness to a better advantage. So I mean, he's a keeper. We just got to find the right spot for him. Walter Nolan's going to be out for a while, so you're going to need to address his position in the draft. A guy like Lee Hunter, Texas Tech, would fit that bill. There's some guys out there that could really step in and be valuable for us. Dante Stills, disappointing year. Never, coming out of training camp, he was looking really good, and then it didn't really translate into the games. But he'll be on his fourth year in a contract situation. It's make or break for him, and I think he's got what it takes to make something for himself. Zachary Carter, I thought, turned some heads on a few occasions. So it's good to have him back there for depth. But we're going to need a free agent, and we're going to need probably a day 2 draft pick to address this up, and then get Calais back. Let's move on.
All right, let's go to
inside linebacker. So we get Mac Wilson Jr. back. But I saw enough from Cody Simon to think he is the future at Mike. And maybe you kick Mac over back to week where he was in his first year. But I think it would be a big mistake to move away from Cody Simon. What do you guys think?
Oh, I definitely agree with that. Simon's coming on. I think the guy you probably should cut, or at least consider cutting or releasing him, is Gaither. You save the team about $5 million, and you've got a relatively small cap hit.
Right. I agree with that. Yep.
I like Gaither, but financially, I think that's the move.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I think the big question there is just what is Owen Popo going to be going forward?
What a question mark he is, for sure.
He played well. He played really well. He was the Elijah Jones of inside linebackers.
Yeah.
They don't use him. The kicker was his rookie year, starting a guy in front of him who had like a 34 PFF grade all for 11 starts. It just made no sense. It made no sense to cut Isaiah Simmons, who would have been way better. He's coming off a good year at that position, weak inside linebacker. He's not totally tailor-made for that, but he's brought a lot to it. Instead, you're rolling out a guy who's never really played the position where he was in the NFL because he showed why. And then you draft Popo in the 5th round and you don't play him. Finally, in the end of the season, they started playing him. I thought he played great. He had the highest coverage grade of any inside linebacker.
Yeah, then that's my question there is if you think Popo can be play 70% of the snaps guy instead of a 30% of the snaps guy, then Davis Gaither isn't necessary. But
agreed.
But maybe the numbers would speak differently. I mean, to Sam's point, financially, maybe it makes more sense, but Davis Gaither was probably more productive than Popo last season, which again, for what value you're getting, maybe it makes more sense to just keep Popo and maybe extend hit. Cause I think he's going into year 3 or 4. I can't remember. It was 4.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, this is the last year on his deal. So maybe that's the long-term solution at the position, but you just kind of propose the question mark. If you think he can handle a bigger role and play to the level that you need, then Davis Gaither becomes unnecessary. But I don't know how they feel about Popo going forward.
Well, I know what I feel about Popo, and I think he's this kind of generation's linebacker because he's fast as hell. And he's an asset in coverage. And he can chase down people's left and right. The question about him has always been, is he a downhill guy to get to the football? And I thought he showed some of that. He's also a very good blitzer and a timely blitzer. Cody Simon showed that as well. So I think Popo's a keeper. I think you guys handle this perfectly. I think you move on from ADG and then use Popo, and you're probably going to add to this position in the draft. Or in a timely affordable free agent.
I will say how funny that was the worst position group at the start of the year, and now it's a group of depth. How funny did that work out?
Well, Mac Wilson was playing the mic way better than I thought he could. There's a reason why no one's played him there in his career, because it's a speed issue. And you, like I've said in previous, you got to be able to cover the wheel route with a running back. If you can't, you're going to get burned left and right. Cody Simon did that to win an MVP and a natty, taking on the Notre Dame running backs and meeting them at the sidelines on swing passes and wheel routes. That was so impressive, and that's what makes me so high on him, because he does get downhill to football on a timely fashion too. So, but Outside linebacker. Sweaty had a great year. He was the only one, though. Browning had an off year, paying him a lot. I just don't know if he's just got it in him to really have a breakout year. And so what do you guys think about Browning?
I was not real high on Browning when they traded for him, bring him in from the Broncos. He's underperformed. That's kind of what I expected from him.
Yeah.
But then again, who the hell is going to develop a player on the defensive side of the ball, given this coaching staff? So I don't know. He's a kid who, with really good coaching, can really blossom. Zaven had a great year. I wouldn't touch Zaven. Birch had a terrific year. He's cheap. And you got, again, you got to give these guys some quality coaching to see what they can evolve into. Given the money, given the dead cap situation, Browning is really the only one here I would look at. And I would keep running these guys back and with a good coach and see what they can become.
Right.
The only thing I would add is, I would move on from Browning. Ojulari's a good, spot start player, I think, at this point. Injuries obviously are the question with him, but injuries permitting, I think you can put him in certain situations and have him play. The only thing I would hesitate with is Collins, is that he's got 1 year left on the deal, and, he's kind of stuck in that in between. So if you are thinking of investing in the position, maybe he's a trade candidate potentially. You could get a nice day 2 draft pick for him. But other than that, I think you're fine going with Collins and Sweat on the outside.
Right. Because you have Jordan Birch playing the same position, and he's younger and just as talented physically, maybe even more as a pass rusher. Here's my thing. I think that, you save the money on Browning, unfortunately. It depends on who the defensive coordinator is. If he thinks he's got an in with Baron Browning and likes him on the roster, then I'm fine with that.
Yep.
But here's what I want. I want Sweat and an absolute stud opposite him, and we have a chance to draft one of them in the first round. We could get Arvell Reese, who some are projecting to having Micah Parsons type ability off the edge. He played inside, outside at Ohio State. I think here you'd play him, strictly on the outside. Or you got Ruben Bain, who I absolutely love. I love the motor, love the competitiveness, love the bend around the corner, love how versatile he is, how he can slide inside and be a penetrator. And then David Bailey, physically, and he had 15 sacks. David Bailey, this kid is a stud. He's not a great run defender yet. He's not terrible either, but man, can they rush that edge? So, I think getting Sweat, a playmate on the opposite side, who's going to command attention, really, really can open up our pass rush. I don't have confidence in any of these guys as pass rushers yet, so I think we really need a guy we can be confident in. All right, let's move on to the cornerback position. Now, this is fascinating, but also, I think, concerning. We had all these guys. It was amazing to me that in the first 2 years, after drafting 5 cornerbacks, the coaches said, nah, let's draft 2 more and start them in year 3. It's just unbelievable to me. And, this is a mess, right? They left the cornerback room as a total mess, in my opinion, because here's the thing. They drafted for zones. So they got a bunch of zone guys who actually didn't play that well in these soft zones, because no one plays well in these soft zones. we're so poorly coached. I just can't wait to get a whole new scheme in here. But you look at this list, who can play man to man? First of all, I think Murphy Bunting is going to be gone. That's a given. Second of all, Max Melton, I think, is a good man player. I think you can even play him in the slot. Will Johnson you got to put him on slower guys in man. Garrett Williams, you got to put him on slower guys in man. Elijah Jones, amazing that he finally gets to play and ends up with the highest PFF grade of the entire defense for the year. I mean, that is one of the most criminal derelictions I have ever seen from a coaching staff. You draft this guy in a third round and you ghost him for all these games when you're getting your ass kicked in games. And there are all these, you're down by 25 points. Put the guy in the game. Put him in. But they didn't. They're playing guys off the practice squad. It's a Marty Mercado all over again on the defensive side. If I were Elijah Jones, I would have been livid. And I'm sure he was. He's a competitor. In the preseason, he was the best man-to-man guy on the field of all the cornerbacks. And you don't play him because you're not a man team. Well, now that hopefully we'll be a man team, Elijah Jones is back in the picture. And he ought to be because the guy can play man. And he's physical. He tackles. Denzel Burke did a tremendous job with what he had. He was a better player in man than I thought. Although he got beat on some real 50-50 balls a lot. And that's something I think he can improve and get his hands more in there on the catch radius. But he showed some real tenacity and was one of the better all-around corners that we had. And then, of course, Jaden Davis is a practice squad guy who can play special teams. And Kalen King they picked up late. Then you have Sterling Thomas V, who's a restricted free agent. I would try to keep him on. That guy can play man, I think, although he's coming back from major knee injury. I think we have to add. This kid D'Angelo Pons from Indiana has totally captured my imagination. I just mocked him in the second round. He's a smaller guy, but he is white on rice, and he's really good in man, really good. So I think we got to start thinking man corners, and and try to sift out some of this of who can and get these guys who are kind of shaky in man, like Will Johnson and Garrett Williams, to improve and have matchups for them that they can win. And I think that's entirely likely. What do you guys think?
Well, I agree with every word you said, especially when you describe the squad and the way they've been coached as a disaster. And Bunting certainly is down the road. No reason to keep him, especially for the cap savings we get. And I think probably the two most important position coaches we're going to bring in here is the cornerbacks coach and the offensive line coach.
Yep, and I got something to say about that soon. What do you think, Kyle?
So here's where I'm stuck. I know Murphy Bunting's going to be gone. I know Garrett Williams probably won't be back to start next year, although hopefully they get him back at some point during the season. They definitely need to add to the room. There's no guy at number 3 who's worth taking from the cornerback position, so no need to take him there. Use one of those day 2 picks to get a corner. I would scour the trade market to see if you can trade for a premier corner. There's talk the Ravens might not bring back Marlon Humphrey. Kansas City is, dragging their feet a little bit on a Trent McDuffie extension. Maybe something happens where he becomes available. I'm willing to use one of those day 2 picks, either 34 or whatever it is, 65. I would see if you can leverage one of those picks to try and trade for a premier starting corner who can play both slot and the outside and man. But
Yeah.
outside of that, you just draft and see if you can develop, because they have the young guys like Melton and Will Johnson and Elijah Jones and Burke. Keitrell Clark is still around. I don't know if they bring him back on the practice squad or something, but I guess my only idea is just use one of your picks, try to go to the trade market and see if you can trade for a corner.
Yeah, here's how deceptive the coaches were too. Which Garrett Williams is not a slot cornerback, NFL slot cornerback. He's just not. He's a
No.
he's a zone cornerback safety. I mean, slot guys have to play you man to man, white on rice. That's why in free agency, the guy I would like to see them get is Roger McCreary. Get him in here to play the slot. Get the slot covered. There's not a guy here who's a classic slot corner. That's why people kept saying to me, "Oh no, Cooper DeJean, you don't need him. We already have a slot corner." No, that's why I was like wanting Mikey Sanders still and guys like that. I've always been preaching the slot for years. You guys know that, and we still don't have it nailed down. I mean, Garrett Williams, I would convert him to safety and use him as a nickel safety. That I think is his niche, and I love him in that role. And Will's got to find a way to step up his game in man. What was disappointing to me was I thought often the case it looked like he was running at 3/4 speed, and that is an absolute no, especially in trail technique. He's not that fast to begin with, and if you're going to run at 3/4 speed, you're going to get beat a lot. Will's a funny player. And when he turns it on, he looks like all world. When he turns it off, he looks like he doesn't give a shit. And it's a weird dynamic with him. And then, of course, you worry about the durability. All right, safety position. I was typing this up so fast, I have commas where there should be periods. Budda Baker. I think it's probably time. It depends who gets hired. Of course, if Vance Joseph gets the head coaching job, Budda will love that, and he'll want to stay because Vance knows what to do with Budda. Or whoever else, like if Matt Burke gets hired, I think he and Budda had a really good relationship. But I think this is one of the biggest off-season decisions. I have to understand where Budda Baker's head is does he really want out? I mean, he sold his mansion. I mean, I don't know if something's cooking there. And look at the numbers there. You got a 13 million dead cap, and he's got 7.8 million coming guaranteed on a 19.2 cap hit. Budda Baker is the heart and soul of our defense, and if whoever comes in here can reignite him and bring his game back. These coaches took his game away big time. They made him go backward first rather than forward. And Budda storming the alleys needs to go forward. He can't have a backward gear because it's all about getting there on time. If you go back a step and give up that second at time, you're cooked. So, what do you guys think of Budda moving forward? Sam?
The Budda Baker situation will give us more insight, if you will, into how savvy and how smart our GM is. Budda Baker needs to get traded post June 1st. We'll save $16 million in cap space with only a dead cap charge of $3 million spread over 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Buddha selling his house tells me everything we need to know about where Buddha's head is.
Right.
And I wish him the best of luck playing for a quality franchise down the road. He deserves that. He deserves to play in the playoffs every year, and he deserves a shot at a ring. So I wish him the best of luck. And he's the most recent escapee from the Cardinal jail.
Yeah, indeed. What do you think, Kyle?
I've talked about it for years. You do right by your Ring of Honor players, your franchise cornerstones. If getting an extra round of a pick is not worth the long-term benefits of having Budda Baker be around your organization, an ambassador for your organization, just a positive voice for your organization.
Right.
So if that means you cut him and take the extra dead cap hit, if that means you trade him to a place he wants to go and you don't get very much in return, you just do right by your franchise legends. That's the way you should conduct business in the NFL. You can still succeed even without maximizing value on your trade. Look at Detroit. They didn't get the best offer for Stafford, but they sent him to a place he wanted to go and did right by him, and they still have a positive relationship. So you do what Buddha wants best and figure out the rest from there. That's the first thing you do. And the money situation doesn't, I mean, within reason, which this is a reasonable situation, the money of it all doesn't really matter all that much.
Yeah. Weird in a year's time how our 2 bell cow leaders are now subjects for being traded or released. That's really sad to me. One due to injuries with Connor. It's really sad to me. It once again makes me realize what a wasted year this was, and a wasted 3 years to get to this point, to not have them reap the benefits of what should have been 3 years of getting the Cardinals in the right place. Because they did everything they humanly could, both of them, to try to get us there. But I agree with you guys. I think that, what Buddha wants, he should get. And it'll be interesting to see what Buddha's reaction to the new head coach will be. But I'm not hiring Vance Joseph just to make sure Buddha's happy. Of course, I don't want to see us hire Vance Joseph anyway, because I think it just signals more of the same. Not that, maybe I think Vance has a chance somewhere with a fresh start and with coordinators that he can work with. I think he's a good guy. I think he's got a certain amount of charisma. But we've had Vance for 4 years and it didn't work. And so you're now saying, like, it's sort of like coming back on Kyler Murray. If it wasn't working then, why is it going to work now? And but the rest of the safety room is young and talented. I mean, Joey Blunt, we missed him on special teams and his leadership. He should be back. I love the combo of Dadrion Taylor Demerson, who, quite frankly, they didn't unleash him properly either. I think he is a star in the making under the right coaching. And then Keaton Crawford, I think, is a potential star in the making too. Kid's a playmaker. And he was leading our team in PFF for most of the year. He was balling when he came in. Trickled off due to injuries a little bit at the end, but I think he's a player. I think now, obviously, you're going to have to address the safety position in the draft as well. There are some really good safeties in there. So, and special teams, we got to get, Ryland is a restricted free agent. They're going to take care of him, I believe. And then you got to get Gillikin and Brewer back. Hawk did a pretty good job, I thought, filling in for Gillikin, but Gillikin is on his own island, in my opinion, in terms of doing everything you need a punter to do. I don't know if he's got the arm that Hawk has, with a beautiful fake, but but anyway, let's go to the free agents. So this should be cut and dried. I'll start with the first one. We'll just go down the list. We'll do them one at a time. I'll do Jalen. Sam will do Calais. And Little Rock can do Beecham. Jalen Thompson, time to move on. Calais Campbell.
Depends on what he wants to do and at what price.
Correct. Kelvin Beecham.
Yes. At what cost to be determined, but yeah, him and Christian Jones at least gives you something on the right side of the offensive line.
So yes, re-sign him.
Yes, yes, re-sign. I mean, depends on the price, but yes, re-sign him if you can.
Well, he's always been bargain basement price. So Jonah Williams, no. Greg Dortch. Sam?
Love Greg Dortch. Again, comes down to two things. Does he want to come back here? I don't know if he does.
Right.
Then again, at what price? But I really like Greg Dortch. And
I'll tell you what, if Mike McDaniel is the head coach, Greg Dortch, sign me up.
You got it.
I'll be the new Waddle.
You got it. That's right.
LJ Collier.
Again, depends on the price. Not against LJ Collier, but
probably NFL minimum. So
yeah, I mean, if he's going to be that combo practice squad player / activated when they need somebody, then it's fine. But we'll see.
I agree. Will Hernandez, unfortunately, not another guy who was a bell cow, but was lost in injuries. And we got the young guards. So yeah, Michael Carter, Sam.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. He needs a fresh start somewhere else. Zay Jones.
I will go no. I think that ship has sailed.
Right. Simi Fehiko, I like that kid. Really good on special teams. So in light of that, I say yes. And he's not going to cost that much. Bring him in and to compete. And I liked him in the free agency in catching the football, and it never really happened in games. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him because I think he's got really good speed, and So yes, I want Simi back. Pharaoh Brown. Sam?
I have no clue. I have no clue. It'll be league minimum. It'll be a little bit of money.
It'll be for depth, and he probably wouldn't make the roster given the 4 we have.
Right.
Channing Tindall. I'll speak to him. I love this kid, and he was great on special teams, and he played a little bit at linebacker. I loved him coming out of Georgia. I say yes to bringing him back. Darren Hall, Little Rock.
Well, that's my San Diego State guy, so yes at any price.
All right. I was really disappointed in him. Of course, he got the concussion, and I thought, what a chance for him to showcase his skills, and he really, really didn't. It's sad to me. He did in preseason, but then when he was asked to in the regular season, really struggled, I thought. Josiah DeGuerra had the touchdown catch, last touchdown for the Cardinals this year. If he's going to be an NFL minimum guy, I say keep him on. I mean, he might get some interest elsewhere and go on, but he'd have a chance. He's a solid receiving type tight end. Blake Gillikin, I think we all agree, let's have him back. Aaron Brewer, I think we all agree, let's have him back if he doesn't retire. And there are other guys, long snappers, they could. Cap space is 27.1, but if we do some of the trimming that our resident GMs just did, we could double that figure pretty easily, I think, or maybe even more, and have more in the well for the new head coach. And so now we're going to shift our gaze to the new head head coach. Let's kick it off with, we've been talking about a guy that the Cardinals haven't, a candidate the Cardinals haven't looked into yet or requested an interview with. Each of us has an idea. Sam, who's your candidate that you'd love to see the Cardinals interview?
Well, since you took Mike McDaniels, I don't want to be a spoiler alert here, but and Kyle took Brady. I
you're spoiling the whole thing.
I know. I focused on Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
And I can hear everybody now saying, "Oh no, another Cleveland Browns reject." However, before John Harbaugh became available, he was the number one coach on everybody's list. That's according to USA Today, the Ringer, CBS Sports, The Athletic, and others. He's ranked as one of the best available coaches. He's been interviewed or requested an interview by 8 of the teams looking for a coach. We're the only ones who haven't requested an interview. You know, he was 2-time coach of the year. He led the Browns to 2 playoff appearances. He worked for a terrible, terrible, dysfunctional organization with a horrible owner who signed the worst free agent contract in history. And through all of it, he's been class act. He's also coached in one of the toughest divisions in football and has done a pretty good job. He has a ton of experience. He worked for the Vikings for 14 years in several offensive coaching positions. He did a great job with Kirk Cousins, Joe Flacco, and he has a very easy to understand offensive scheme, very quarterback friendly, run friendly, and he knows how to hire a staff. He brought in Bill Callahan, Jim Schwartz. That Jim Schwartz hiring was really smart.
Yep.
And he has always relied on and has added experienced voices with high standards, and unlike our previous regime. And he put some stability into that unstable franchise. So given that he's so highly coveted by so many teams, I think he's worth mentioning, and I certainly think he's worth interviewing.
All right. Great pitch. Kyle.
All right. Well, I do want to say first and foremost, am I allowed to now change my pick to Mike Tomlin? Because if you could land Mike Tomlin, go get Mike Tomlin. But it seems like he's going to take a year off from coaching, and you'd have to trade for him because it's a resigning situation. But it's freaking Mike Tomlin. You trade whatever you want for Mike freaking Tomlin. I mean, Come on, that would be your best chance to change the entire course of your franchise's history. But obviously, not going to be able to get him. My guy's Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. He would be, I believe, now the youngest head coach in the NFL if they hired him, which I know is something Walter and Sam have both been opposed to at this point. But I think this is the way of the NFL. And you keep mentioning you have to have someone who has that special ability in the play calling to go toe to toe with a lot of these guys. I believe in Joe Brady, both obviously from the work he did as basically a 20-year-old. He was 29 calling plays for the national championship LSU team back in 2019 to work he did at the beginning of Sam Darnold's turnaround in Carolina. Now, things didn't go his way there, and they ended up firing him, and the whole staff got fired a year later out there in Carolina with Matt Rule. But did good things at the beginning with Sam Darnold and what's his name? Teddy Bridgewater. and then gets to Buffalo, and you've seen the difference between him and Ken Dorsey. For so many years, I looked at that Buffalo offense and said they just cannot find a way to run the ball. They just cannot find any run game, whether it was with Singletary or the early days of Cook. Josh Allen was their leading rusher year after year in the Dayball offenses, and then eventually the Ken Dorsey offenses. And this year they schemed up a run to make, and offensive line improved, of course, too, but they were able to scheme up a great running game behind James Cook, mixed in some Josh Allen runs. Cook led the league in rushing this year. They went from being Josh Allen throws 4 touchdowns to Gabe Davis in a playoff game team to they're built on the backs of the running game, and they are built on the backs of not just Josh Allen being bigger and stronger than everyone, but they play a great running game. The way they use tight ends is fantastic, and that's something that's super important for the Cardinals because they have big pass-catching tight ends, or at least Trey McBride being the big pass-catching tight end. And what they do with Kincaid and Dawson Knox essentially being their red zone threats, I think would work tremendously with what the Cardinals are trying to do. I've been a big fan of Joe Brady since that LSU time, and I knew that somebody was going to give him a shot as a head coach. And seeing and obviously Ken Dorsey isn't the cream of the crop offensive play caller, but seeing the difference night and day between what they were running with Dorsey and seeing what they're running now with Joe Brady, and having that incredible running game, the work to the tight ends, I think Joe Brady would work tremendously in Arizona. I think he would make a lot of sense for Pittsburgh, who I saw that crazy stat that the Steelers have hired only coaches in their 30s since 1935, which tells you that's the model to go with. If you get the young, great coach, they can be your coach for 10 to 20 years. I think McVay is still in his 30s and is the second longest tenured coach in the league. I think if you get a good one, that's the way to go. And I really believe Joe Brady has that special ability, like a Kevin O'Connell, like Stefanski, who Sam just mentioned, like Shanahan and Ben Johnson, and those guys who were excellent on the play calling side. I mean, what they've done to transform an offense in Buffalo that was working tremendously and now is more balanced, and they're able to succeed without paying for a premium wide receiver. I really think Joe Brady would work tremendously with what the Cardinals are doing on offense. And that's my pitch for him, even though he would be and obviously bring in some defensive senior assistants, whatever you think. He has connections to Leslie Frazier, who used to be the DC out there in Buffalo. So, I just think that Joe Brady, despite being the youngest head coach in the NFL, would be a great hire for the Arizona Cardinals.
Excellent pitch. We got 2 great pitches. I want Mike McDaniels. I think he is a Mensa type offensive mind. Got great instincts. I thought the job he did with Tua was amazing. I never thought, particularly post concussions, I never thought he would get that much out of Tua. And I think here's one of the things that really saddened me was we never got a chance to see Cliff with a second quarterback, a young one. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, they're never going to see McDaniel with a second quarterback, a young one. And he started yours from Texas in the last game and got a good game out of him. These guys are, like Kingsbury and McDaniel, they're a special breed. And they give their teams a competitive advantage. And they're quarterback whisperers, guys who can really do well with quarterbacks. And imagine what can happen when you get them the right one, like Cliff got with Jaden Daniels. And it's sad that derailed this year because Daniels got hurt. And that was the worry about him coming out of LSU. Does he have the frame that can stand up? Well, he had the frame to stand up for 14 wins as a rookie, and amazingly. I'm just amazed just while I'm there at this that, I mean, Cliff and their offense carried that team. And a year later, you're firing Cliff. And not only that, okay, because the Achilles heel has been like with the Cardinals with Gannon. The Achilles heels is Dan Quinn's defense has been awful. I mean, awful. They were last year, they were just hanging on by a thread. And this year, they were just hit rock bottom. But the guy you fire is Cliff. And who do you replace him with? A Cliff protege who's 30 years old. I mean, and you're saying we want a different system. What kind of a different system are you going to get from David Blau, who only really knows Cliff's system? Now, Blau will probably bring in his own element and this and that. I hope he does well. But you're going from a coordinator who's talking about the 10,000 hour rule. I mean, he has it 10 times over. This guy has been calling plays every day of his life for the last 12 years, except for the time at USC when he had the year off. But he was a one-on-one tutor of one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL now. It just makes no sense to me. The other thing that just caught me funny was that the Dallas Cowboys just interviewed Jonathan Gannon for their DC job. Who would he be replacing? His mentor.
Yeah, Eberflus.
Who runs the offense better. I mean, it's sort of like, what are people thinking? I mean, you're just going for a name or something, or, I don't know. I can't solve other people's problems, but I just thought those two scenarios were absolutely bizarre to me. But anyway, getting back to McDaniel, he comes from, he's like part of the Brat Pack. I mean, all those guys, the 2013 Redskins staff will go down in history as one of the most epic set of Mensa types you will ever get in one room. I mean, McVay, Shanahan, you had Bobby Slowick, you had Mike McDaniel, you had Ricky Morris. There were, in fact, other guys in there. Nonetheless, I mean, this is where Mike McDaniel cut his teeth. And anyone who suggests to me he's not a leader of men is just out of their mind. You don't get in a position like this and be around people like the kind of people he's been around his whole career without being a leader of men. Yes, he's quirky, but in a way, it's kind of nice. It's out of the box. I mean, Belichick, in his own way, was quirky, particularly with the media. He was coy and everything. So to make a big deal out of, we want a big leader who commands the room. Mike McDaniel can command any room. The reason why he can do it is players are curious about him. He's got a keen wit. The chance for humor is there any second, which I always think commands an audience. If you give people a threat to laugh, they're going to be tuned in. But at the same time, he's just bright. I mean, he has an ability to think ahead, which good play callers can do. So I like the fact that he's now had 4 years of experience as a head coach, and 2 of which he got his team to the playoffs. Like the point that Sam made about Stefanski getting his team to the playoffs 2 years, that means a lot. I mean, Brady's in the playoffs now with a revamped offense. Kyle made a great case for him. But McDaniel, here's the thing. So in his last year as coordinator of the 49ers, which was, 4 years ago, he had 3,000 combined yards from Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo. And by the way, Debo's a free agent this year. I think if Mike McDaniel got called, Debo's going to get hired. Debo's going to get a phone call, and I would love that. Talk about putting a guy in a slot who could command the slot. That would be just fantastic. All right, so and then what he's gotten in Miami is consistent, like 3,400 yards combined with Gesicki, with Tyreek Hill, and Waddle. Jalen Waddle, excuse me. You put up numbers like that as a coordinator, you're feeding people with, by the way, not necessarily the best quarterbacks in those situations to have. I don't think top 10 quarterbacks either. You're feeding guys like that. That's pretty amazing. So yeah, I would love to see them interview Mike McDaniel and see what happens with that. With that, Kyle, can you post my tweet about my rankings? I called it Red Reigns because I didn't know who Sam was going to pick, but so I'm not a Stefanski fan, so I didn't rank him. And the reason why I'm not a Stefanski fan is, what quarterback has he developed? The one good one he had, he let go of. And plus, talk about more of the same is, we're going to run a Stefanski offense again after Petzing. Well, that's going to be a way to just ruin the fans. I mean, heavy wide zone schemes, and pound the rock, and hope to convert on third downs. Now it's interesting that I think that the argument you made was really convincing about the playoffs and the things and the staff. I mean, if Jim Schwartz is in tow with a Stefanski, that makes it all the more appealing, doesn't it? I mean,
I agree.
I
agree.
Get a pro like Schwartz in here. Well, then it makes me feel like, well, if we want a different offensive guy, we could hire Schwartz as head coach, and look elsewhere. But I have to. It's going to be interesting to see how Stefanski does somewhere else, because I must have missed his coach of the year years, and was not paying as much attention.
It was the 2 years the Browns made the playoffs, which they were basically like, you took the Browns to the playoffs? You must be a miracle worker.
Yeah, and they beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh.
That's right.
Yeah. And then
with Baker Mayfield. And then you jettison him off. And then now it's the quarterback carousel extraordinaire.
The other one was the year that Schwartz had the defense playing at like number one. I can't remember who they lost to in the playoffs, but they got beat pretty bad in the playoffs. But
yeah,
that was a couple of years ago when Schwartz had the defense looking really good.
Yeah.
I think it was the Texans. I think it was D'Amico's first year. I think the Browns got beat by them in the playoffs with Joe Flacco. That was the year Flacco was quarterbacking him.
Yep. Well, where Sam, I think, has a really good point is, with Stefanski, you got a kind of a pro head coach. If he could, sort of be the head coach and have coordinators that kind of can do their own thing, or like, I'm confident in Jim Schwartz. That would be awesome having him here. Although this year I thought Jim Schwartz was playing more like Gannon-esque zones. It drove me nuts whenever I watched them, particularly late in games. They were just like not covering people, and their corners had a down year. It's just, that's weird to me. I don't know what happened with him this year, but Jim Schwartz in his prime, or who's hot, I love. But yeah, I mean, there's some appeal there to Stefanski, and he's a good leader. He holds it together, even though with the Browns it was constant chaos. So
and I also think the biggest reluctance or black mark Stefanski has is Drew Petzing. Well, Petzing ran his own offense. He implemented his own system. It was distinct from Stefanski's wide zone approach, different personnel, different coaching staff. He never called plays, never came close to calling plays in Cleveland. And he was promoted as a play caller here, and he wasn't ready for the job. Any on-field performance issues in Arizona are not Kevin Stefanski's fault. And with respect to quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins has played for Mike Shanahan, and Kirk Cousins still says to this day, Stefanski as an assistant QB coach in Minnesota was most responsible for his development.
Wow. Good get.
And Joe Flacco looked pretty good as a Cleveland Brown this year before management decided to trade him. So Stefanski's hands have been tied. I said on our blog, I said that we need someone who manages Monty and Bidwill.
Okay.
And I think Stefanski will come in here with a mandate that he sets that you guys need to get out of my way. I'm not working for another idiot GM and another idiot owner.
Wow. If they had the ESPN, excitement meter, this one just went up for Cardinal fans to hear that. No doubt about it. So, but here is, I say it's Red Reigns. It's really mine. And so I'm going to give my boys a chance to put up their own or fiddle around with this. But here's I think Flores is just so dynamic in every which way. And I see him getting one of them. I think he'd be a great fit as Mike Tomlin's successor, given that, knowing the Rooneys, and that they were the only ones to give Brian Flores a chance back at coaching after he filed a lawsuit against the NFL. I thought was really awesome of them to do that. And in his time in Pittsburgh, players and coaches were raving about Flores. And not on both sides of the ball. They said the offensive players were saying, he's giving us tips left and right that are working. I just think he's got the total package. Robert Saleh, Salah, wow, what a job he did. His run blitzes at key times in that game, knowing he's overmatched, helped win that game. They got 7 tackles for loss on run blitzes. I mean, dialing that up at the right times, it tells me this guy has, not only is he a motivational guy, he's got a command of the X's and O's. And that combination is just brilliant. Plus, he's got the personality and the huge chip on his shoulder. I love that guy. Chris Shula, I think, is a rising star. Well, the job he's done with the Rams has been spectacular. I mean, they didn't have that great a secondary. They're playing way better than I thought they would. Of course, it helps when you have a pass rush like this, but they've been developing their own homegrown talent. We need someone like that who can do that. So can we go back to my list? Are we just kind of checking out here? Oh, well. Matt Burke. All right, that's interesting. He's a name that came up this week because they just announced they're going to talk to him. Of course, he had a just spectacular game in the playoffs, a couple days ago. Just basically, taking them. Who did they play? Who did they stifle? Was it Justin Herbert? I think it was
Texans were the Steelers.
The Texans.
Yeah, they played the Steelers in the wild card.
Oh, the Steelers. Yeah, of course. And, taking down Aaron Rodgers and, the whole – he's just doing it. He's on fire. Here's my worry, though, is that he'd bring Billy Davis, the linebacker coach, as his DC. And been there, done that, and that would be more of the same. I mean, Billy Davis was largely responsible for all the linebacker mess ups with Vance, the two of them together, screwed up all those draft picks, never got them playing on schedule. And I looked at their PFF grades when, their inside linebackers are two of the lower graded players on their unit of a defense that's pretty stellar all the way around. So, that would be concerning to me. However, there's a guy who on their staff who is absolutely unbelievable, is their defensive backs coach, Dino. Dino Vasso is his name. This guy, I mean, he's like a Mike Tomlin in the wings. Maybe not as like, physically imposing as Mike Tomlin, but similar. That with the Eagles, he won a Super Bowl as a defensive assistant, and now in the last few years with the Texans, and they held him over from the past coaching staff because he's doing so well with Stingley, and now look at the job he has been doing with Kwame Lassiter, and that secondary of theirs. This is a budding young star, so if he could bring Vasso with him as DC, I'd be out of my mind. And then you could take, hopefully get an offensive coordinator who could be a really good fit on the other side. Because I like Matt Burke. I liked how he coached our line. I liked how he developed Zach Allen. I love what he's doing up front in the front, with his line in Houston. I love the thought of him getting his hands on Reese, Bain, or Bailey, and adding to our pass rush. So I think that there's something to work with there, as long as it's not with Billy Davis. It just would have been my worry with Vance coming in, is him tabbing Billy Davis again. I just don't think he's that good enough inside linebacker coach, and I want Cody Simon in the right hands. And then Jesse Minter is coming on strong. I mean, he did a good job against the Patriots this week, held them down. What are you guys' thoughts on the defensive candidates? Sam, we'll start with you.
Well, with respect to the coaches, I've got two caveats in mind. Which one's going to bring in the strongest staff across the board? You look at a guy, I love Brian Flores. He's my top DC coach because he's got great reputation. He's learned a lot. He was former head coach, and he knows how to run a defense. Question in my mind is, who's he going to bring in as an OC? With respect to Robert Salah, I'm not a huge fan, but if he brings in a strong OC, and I'm not a huge fan of Robert Salah's because it was a complete and total failure with him in New York on the offensive side of the ball. And that may be because the situation was out of his hands.
Right.
In terms of other names that are not on here, I like VJ over these. And my other caveat is really revolves around something Kyle said last podcast. We don't need any more risky hires. And I really like that. And I after hearing him say that, I've looked at all these candidates with that in mind. Who's a risky hire and who is a good, solid, credible hire? So I think you got to put VJ in that category. I think you got to talk to Spagnuolo. I think Jim Schwartz is worth a conversation. Yeah,
I was going to put Spagnuolo, but I don't think he wants to leave Kansas City.
Well, he's smart not to.
Yeah, I think he's well ensconced there.
Yep.
I think if he were more interested in it, we would know that. But you're right. I mean, there's not a top 5 list without Spagnuolo. You're absolutely right. So, but you like VJ better than these guys?
I like VJ better than all of them, with the exception of Flores. I love Flores.
Wow.
And I think they can hire Flores.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, Kyle, your thoughts?
One other name we haven't mentioned that I would throw in there is Raheem Morris.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Things didn't go great on the offensive side of the ball in Atlanta. Part of that was they did the weird hybrid Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix thing.
Yeah.
But despite not investing a first round pick in the defense until this past year, when they traded back up into the first round to draft, I forgot the guy's name now, but and despite not investing on the defensive end of the ball, they had a top 12 defense this past season in DVOA rankings. So I would put Morris in there probably over Jesse Minter.
Yes.
Not on the list, but also just honorable mention is Ejiro Evero over there with the Panthers. Wouldn't put him top 5 on any list, and he's not really a head coaching candidate right now, but just honorable mention also. I would put him up there too. Other than that, I think you guys covered pretty much everybody else.
All right. Great call on Morris. I really like that guy. I think he had him winning down the stretch. I don't know what the problem was. I mean, like you said, Kyle, I mean, he got handcuffed by the organization with the quarterback situation. That was so awkward. And just the stun factors of all that, and like just being double crossed from the start.
Offense was clunky. They lost a couple games on special teams mistakes too, which obviously they were revolving kickers all season long. But the defense was very good, or at least it was above average. It wasn't top 5 or anything like that. But the defense,
and he did a great job with his stud draft picks, particularly the 2 edges. Pierce was fantastic. That is, player development is one of the real calling cards of Raheem Morris. I would be delighted if we have him in some capacity, either as head coach or as DC. So
the other thing I was going to add is if you do hire one of those guys, now that John Harbaugh looks like he's going to go somewhere else, I would at least kick the tires and see if Todd Monken would come over. Only because he doesn't seem to be a hot name in the coordinator search, and he's never been an NFL guy, so he doesn't have a lot of connections to anybody. So, just see maybe if you're Saleh, see if Monken would come over. If you're Chris Shula, see if Monken would come over. If you're Raheem Morris, see if Monken would come over.
Right. I think Monken probably wants to go with Harbaugh wherever he goes, but I did see he did get a head coaching interview. I think it was with the Titans. So he's on the radar there. Although admittedly coming off a tough season in Baltimore. So 5 top offensive-minded head coach candidates. As I made my pitch for McDaniel, I think he's the top of the line. Cliff, of course, he's in high demand. He's going to end up with somebody in a pretty. I know the Eagles are really high on having him be their OC. The Lions might be involved there. The Ravens just interviewed him as head coach with maybe the thought of, if they hire a defensive guy, offering him the chance to work with Lamar. And it's still shocking to me that the Commanders would let go of Cliff. That's just ridiculous. Just one other quick thing about that is the synchronicity of Cliff getting fired in both years where there's a star player, derailed the offseason by holding out and creating this huge drama, only to end up getting the money he would have gotten anyway, and then only to end up getting knocked out for the season with injuries. It just seems like a football god karma. that this happens every time to teams. Look at the Ayuk situation 2 years ago. The whole team couldn't recover from that. I mean, when you got this constant drama and you can't get your whole team on the field in the offseason, and you're, like every day, what's going on with Ayuk? Look at the Ayuk situation, how that's backfired. It's absolutely amazing that in 1 year's time they could be moved off from that, even though he's still there. But with Terry McLaurin, it would have been such a different scenario if they just gotten it done and gotten it out of the way. And so, I mean, it just creates kind of a dark cloud, and it's just kind of weird that it all works out that way. With Kyler doing his thing in 2022, it ended up getting probably more of the money than he even was bargained for. Came in, had the issues, the drama that continued with the contract clauses, and then you had him playing poorly and then suffering a season-ending injury. I mean, it's just uncanny to me that this happened to Cliff twice. And then, ironically, coincidentally, in both years, Zach Ertz suffered major knee injuries late in the season. That's bizarre, too.
It's bad deja vu all over again for Cliff, because Cliff is the scapegoat for a bad defensive coach's hire.
Right.
I mean, the guy the part of the squad in Washington that underperformed was that defense. Wasn't the offense. That offense with the injuries overperformed. That's Cliff's doing.
Right.
They hired the wrong guy in their head coach. He's the wrong guy. And Cliff's taken the hit for it. And Cliff told the GM who made the mistake, I'm not coaching for you. And so I think it was more mutual. I don't know if I think everything I read, the reports were he's just leaving. There wasn't a firing involved.
Right.
So Cliff will land on his feet because Cliff's very talented.
Yeah. And I hope this time around for him it's a better situation. And I just, Cliff with quarterbacks is a pretty special thing.
Yep.
It just is.
He'd be a great coach for Lamar.
Oh my God. That would be must-see TV in my mind. So, and then I had Clint Kubiak, the fast-charging Seahawk, who's, knocking on the door. He doesn't quite have the experience of the other two yet, so I didn't, but he's knocking on that door. I too, love Joe Brady. And then Thomas Brown, being here in New England, this is a guy I wrote on Twitter today. He's a hidden gem. And let me say what. First of all, he's the passing game coordinator for the Patriots. And I don't know if you've noticed that Drake May, as a second-year player, has engineered the third best passing attack in the NFL this year. And largely due to Josh McDaniels. But behind the scenes here, the guy that Mike Vrabel's been crediting the most is Thomas Brown. And Thomas Brown was you might recall, the interim coach for Caleb Williams, and try to settle down that whole situation. And he was interim head coach there for the Bears after they fired Eberflus. Beyond that, Brown has a Super Bowl working as an assistant. Where was he? Trying to remember. Tampa Bay, maybe? No, somewhere else. But anyway, he's young. He's 39 years old. He's another, one of these fascinating guys who, when he's had a chance to call plays, he's been really good. And so, this is a guy, it would be shocking if he got a head coaching job this early, but he is a guy that if you hire a defensive-minded head coach to bring in as OC would be really fascinating to me because he's great with quarterbacks. All the ones that he's worked with have said so, and Drake May has. And then with the passing game, maybe he can unlock Marv, and that's something that obviously whoever gets the OC job or is calling that offense is going to have to do. So that's a sort of an underrated radar guy. But I think what's really good about what the Cardinals are doing with their the guys they are interviewing is some of these guys could be guys they turn to with like, well, we got a head coach, but we'd love to have you as a coordinator. Like a Raheem Morris. If we went with Mike McDaniel and Raheem Morris, oh my God, I would be out of my mind. That would be amazing. So even Mike McDaniel with Anthony Weaver, who we've interviewed. I like Weaver. I thought he did okay with an undermanned Dolphins team that they traded away Jalen Phillips, and they just kind of had a down year personnel wise. But so I think I like their approach from that end is that there are guys they're interviewing that could reemerge, like Thomas Brown as a legitimate offensive coordinator if they wanted to look in his direction. Your thoughts on these offensive line candidates? Obviously, where would you put Stefanski on this list, Sam?
Oh, I put him very high on the list.
Yeah.
Let me just say we have to hire an offensive-minded head coach, and I've gone through that previously, so I won't get into it again. But if I were running this franchise, I would call Mike McDaniel's agent. I would tell him to have Mike McDaniel be ready to discuss the roster, and I would go down and meet with him and make sure that I offered him the head coaching job and did whatever I had to do to get him here.
Right.
He's head and shoulders, in my opinion, better than anyone. After him, it'd be great to hire Clint Kubiak. I think he's ready to be a head coach, and it would put a huge wrench in Seattle's growth and continuity with respect to Sam Darnold and the rest of that offense. Names that aren't on here that are worth consideration are Brian Dable,
right,
Mike McCarthy.
Right.
I think you have to have a conversation with previous head coach, play caller Arthur Smith.
Yes.
Then if you're looking for Kyle Ledbetter's risky hires, I think you take a look at Mike LaFleur,
right,
who hasn't called plays before, and I really am fascinated. I agree. While Thomas Brown is a very interesting candidate, but again, a risky one.
Right. Yep. And you'd have to have his ducks in a row, with the other, getting the defensive coordinator. So Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, Stefanski probably should be on there just based on body of work and the fact that there's not a ton of play calling offensive coordinator candidates that are available this cycle. Outside of Brady and Kubiak, it's kind of McDaniel and Stefanski and Dayball and guys that have just been head coaches and play callers and those situations. Thomas Brown, I think, is an interesting secondary group, which is offensive minds that haven't called plays yet before. Davis Webb with the Broncos is another version of that, where, everyone keeps bringing up his name, but he hasn't called plays. And so maybe that's why people say he needs some offensive coordinator experience before. Clay Kubiak, Clint's brother, is another one of those guys over there in San Francisco, where offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays. That didn't stop the Dolphins from hiring Mike McDaniel in the same situation. But for example, his brother had to go to the Saints and then to the Seahawks to get some play calling experience and kind of like prove his chops a little bit. So yeah, that secondary group with the Thomas Browns and Clay Kubiak. I know people keep mentioning the guy who's with Ben Johnson. I think it's like Declan Doyle or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yep.
He's another young guy who, again, hasn't called plays before, but people really like him. Could be a future coaching candidate, something like that. There's an interesting crop of those guys that in an off season where there's so many offensive coordinator openings, maybe those guys get an opportunity to call plays for a playoff team next year, or get their first cracks at calling plays, kind of like Drew Petzing got in Arizona, something like that.
Yeah. Thomas Brown has called plays. He was the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers in 2023.
Was
In
that
fact,
the Frank Reich season?
yeah, Reich
Okay.
got upset with himself and handed it over to Thomas Brown. And that I read an article recently where they were saying how he was, based on what he did that year in Carolina when he was asked to call the plays, he was regarded as a real up-and-comer by analysts as being really good at it. So, but it's a limited. And then he was calling some for the Bears last year, trying to settle down. And I thought he did a pretty good job with Caleb Williams down the stretch last year. And I think he served as a good bridge to Johnson and that staff. So,
It hasn't been set up in the best situations.
No, right. And in both situations, there were, coaches were getting fired. He doesn't have that to worry about in New England, and he's got stability there. And he's very well liked by the key components there. So it's a fascinating resume. And you know who groomed him? Got him his first pro job? This fascinates me too. Is Sean McVay found him. So, given the McVay background, you can see there's something about this guy that's got some potential star power to him, and the way that he comports himself, the way that he's a very good communicator. He was an all world running back in high school, and in the pro and in college for Georgia, I believe it was. Posted up big numbers. I think he was a 6th-round draft pick coming out of Georgia. Didn't have a distinguished pro career, but went into coaching thereafter. It's been in it ever since. So, yeah, that was fun to go through because there's all these options. That's my biggest worry for the Cardinals is interviews and interviews and interviews. How do you? I mean, if it were me, and I love what Sam just said about it. If it were me, I would fly down to McDaniel with these stipulations. I would hand the whole thing over to Sam to do that. I think that's exactly what the Cardinals need to do. Because if they just play this waiting game again, they're not going to. And here's the thing, too, is the sooner you hire, the sooner you can get at the coordinators. They're going to get scooped up ASAP, okay? As soon as people are hiring, the best coordinator candidates are going to get swept away. So if you get on top of it first, plus I like the decisiveness of it. If you've got a guy picked out, why do you have to listen to 10 other guys? If you got a guy who you think is your guy, go out and get him. Do whatever it takes. And don't just play this huge wide net game of just waiting and postponing, and then letting it all, and fans are saying, let it all play out. Let it all play out. We have let it all play out. And, risky hires, like you guys are saying. I mean, it's Kyle made a great point about that. And the risk factor is alluring. Unfortunately, I think it's right for the Cardinals. They may be able to get a guy like McDaniels with 4 years of winning football in Miami. People don't realize he's 35 and 33 regular season. and 2 playoff berths. Imagine that translating over with a quarterback finally of his own choice, and with picking a really good defensive coordinator. He and Raheem Morris were on the same 2013 staff. They know each other. What a dream matchup that would be. Oh my God. And plus the way Raheem Morris knows the NFC West and knows McVay left and right, and knows Shanahan. All those guys are buddies and cut from a similar cloth, in my opinion. So tapping into that would be amazing. All right. Parting shots from our experts. Sam the man, what do you got?
No matter who they hire will be an improvement over who they just fired. So we have that going for us. With every new opening, with every new coach's opening, the Arizona Cardinals job drops down a notch. Doesn't go up a notch, drops down a notch. Pittsburgh is a very good opening. I'd love to see Pittsburgh hire John Harbaugh, but that's for another day. But we need an offensive-minded head coach. We're set up for a lame duck GM to make that hire, at least be involved in that hire and involved in team building. And all the names we discussed today, all the names on the list, I don't know which one we're going to wind up with. It certainly isn't going to be one of the top tier candidates because we have a bottom tier opportunity. So I've just got my fingers crossed, and I agree with Walt. You need to hire somebody sooner than later. Don't be the typical Cardinal move and be the last team to hire a staff.
Right.
It never works. So let's see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they'll have some head coaching experience. Hopefully they'll be offensive minded. And, as Cardinal fans, you just got to cross your fingers and hope, because that's all we got going for us.
Yeah, just to hop in on that, he's saying something incredibly important here is that's why Mike McDaniel's out there for the taking, because people are talking about him taking an OC job. That's why you can step in here and go, time out. We don't want you as OC. We want you as head coach calling the plays. And we're going to pay you to do it, and we're going to give you autonomy on your staff. You have that opportunity right now. But he isn't even on your list.
And just to sum up the candidate that I'm most interested in and hoping for is, again, we need a head coach who will manage Monty and Bidwell, not the other way around.
Right. Yep. Yes. And, I think anyone should be able to do that, given, and if not, I think the candidate needs to say, look, like Liam Cohen did, I need my own guy in here. Right? Okay, parting shot, Little Rock.
Yeah, I'm glad we covered some outside candidates today. I like the casting of a wide net in terms of a hire, in part because sometimes you can just bring people in and give you free advice about how to run your organization. Sometimes that's a good thing about casting a wide net is you get different ideas and people who otherwise might not have gotten interviews in another light. So I'm fine with that part of it. We'll see who they end up getting out of this whole process. But the fact that there's now 9 head coaching vacancies makes me think that they probably won't get their first choice, probably won't get their second choice, but that doesn't mean you can't get a high quality coach. And the one I'm surprised hasn't gotten much interest is Dayball. I don't know if he's not going to coach next year or wants to just go be an OC for one of these Super Bowl teams, but I'm surprised no one's really brought him in as a hire or even for an interview. So we'll see how that ends up going, but yeah, McDaniel's right there for the taking, and Kubiak seems to be the Cardinals keep getting connected to him, so maybe he'll get a second interview down the line. We'll see how it all plays out.
Right. Yeah, I was hearing Dayball to the Eagles OC rumor.
That would make a lot of sense.
Reuniting him with Stay Calm Barkley.
It would make sense, but he also coached Jalen Hurts in college, and it did not go well,
at Alabama. So. People forget that. Good one for you, Little Rock.
Yes,
that one queued up.
That's the reason why I don't believe in Dayball.
This kind of stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, what a fun week! It's the playoffs were awesome. Man, was that some kind of fun to watch? And we're hoping for more of the same this weekend. And then we have the Natty coming up Monday night. We'll have interesting news about draft eligible quarterbacks and kind of narrow things down there. But boy, a lot of football this weekend carrying over into Monday, and I hope you enjoy it all. And thanks for joining us here on Red Rain. And we'll be back at you next week on Wednesday. Take care, guys. Have a good week. Red Rain.